Hi, everybody, welcome. I'm Rabbi Avraham Goldhar, and it's great to have you back for another Time for Mishnah episode on Remember Your Learning. So today's session is what I call the 10% rule, which is a very powerful rule to help you understand the power of Chazara, of doing review, and what you can possibly accomplish in a very short amount of time. So let's begin. I've trained many people, I've dealt with people, I've spoken to lots of people about memory, and I find that the number one reason why people don't remember what they learn is, here we go, people forget. That's it. The number one reason why people forget what they learn is that people forget. And we think that, well, because I'm learning something, I should be able to remember it, and if I don't remember it, something's wrong with me. It's not so. There's something called memory, and remembering things, there's something called forgetting. And forgetting is as much a part of being human as trying to remember things is. And you'll see this is not, I'm not being shticky here. There's a real idea that you kind of need to own to really make a change in your expectations of what you can remember and then how you're going to go ahead and remember it. But I want to share with you also the number two reason why people don't remember what they learn is that people forget what they forget. Yeah, it's just an amazing thing that we forget that we forget. So we learn things and then we're always surprised at the end of the day. It's like, why don't I remember my learning? Even though we've had a trail of time, years, who knows how long where we've forgotten things over time, somehow we have a resistance to acknowledging the fact that we forget that we've learned things and we can't hold on to it. So we forget that we forget. And I want to suggest, this is just a suggestion, that perhaps the resistance, which is very deep down, this fact that we can't accept the fact, is that forgetting is very similar to death. We know when Klal Yisrael, we were at Har Sinai, so when we were Makabel the Torah, we got the Torah, we had memory. We could remember everything. And we were totally alive. We became immortal. And then because of the Chet Egel, the sin of the golden calf, we lost our mortality, and we also entered a world of forgetting. And therefore, forgetting is like losing a piece of your life. It's like part of you, so to speak, dying. So perhaps there's a very strong parallel to the same way we have a hard time acknowledging that we're mortal, we also have a hard time acknowledging the fact that we forget. And it's interesting. It doesn't matter how slowly you learn. You could be learning, not just a daf a day, it could be much slower, a daf a month, a daf a year. It doesn't matter how much time you spend on something in the learning side of it. My experience is, and I think most people experience this, no matter how slowly they went through whatever they were learning, over time they forgot it. So we have to acknowledge that fact and realize we have to address it by doing something. So I want to introduce you to what I call Chazara World. Chazara World is the world of review. And the reason why I'm calling it Chazara World is that most people feel about Chazara, they have perhaps negative associations. If I ask most people what they think about when they hear the word Chazara, they might think of, pain, drudgery, I got to do Chazara, some type of yoke on them. They might think about frustration. They don't know how to do Chazara that's effective. And even if they do Chazara, what benefit did they get? Because most people, even if they've gone really slowly, they did review what they did for a certain amount of time, but ultimately they forgot it. So there's a lot of negative association built up, I think, for many people when it comes to Chazara. And we want to change that. And I want to change it by entering what I'm going to call Chazara World. There's a whole world that opens up when you approach Chazara in the proper way, in a healthy way. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to enter Chazara World, is by addressing what I call a major misconception that people have about Chazara, about doing review. And it works like this. You see, when someone is in shir or you have a chavrusa, you're learning something. So you're going through the material, you're learning material. So you're processing the material. Then when you go over the material, right, after the shir or with your chavrusa again, you're going through it again once you've learned it the first time. Even though it's not the first time you're seeing the material, right? You're going over what you heard in shir or what you did with chavrusa or chabur, whatever the case may be. Even though it's the first time, not the first time you're seeing it, you're really not doing Chazara. what you're doing is you're continuing the learning process. You're still working and processing the material. Only when you reach 100% clarity, you have the material down at your fingertips. You've got it all down. ABC, 1, 2, 3, brachas, pei, demai, climb, shvis. You have things at your fingertips. And it's 100% clear, then the Chazara can begin. And therefore, Chazara before clarity isn't Chazara. It's learning. You're still learning the material to get to clarity. Then look what happens. Once you attain clarity, you're in shir, you have a chavrusa, you go over it again until you reach 100% clarity. Once you reach 100% clarity, then boom, Chazara review is fast and easy. It takes a fraction of the time to review something once you have it clear. Because at this point, you're no longer processing the material to get to clarity. You're going over the material to reinforce it so you have ownership of it and you have it down pat in a way that you can easily use automatically to further your learning. So what you do before you're 100% clear is learning. What happens after you're 100% clear is Chazara, and therefore real Chazara only begins after you're 100% clear. Now, what's the typical learning pattern most people have? So in my experience, it works like this. They have a shir, right? They listen, they go with the chavrusa, they go over the material, they reach clarity, and then once they've got clarity, what do most people do? Most people, once they reach 100% clarity, they move on. They move on, and all the material they just worked at to get clear fades away. And they start the next period, process all over again on new material until they reach 100% clarity on that. And then what do? Is they move on. So that moment, like the golden moment, I like to say, grabbing the golden ring, the brass ring, when you've done all the work to get to clarity, and now that you fully understand it, that's the moment to begin Chazara, because it's so fast and easy and productive, because then you can take all that effort that you put into attaining it, and then you can hold on to it and use it in a much more dramatic way, and it's actually pleasurable because you're 100% clear. But unfortunately, that's the learning pattern for most people. Now, the good news is there's something what I call the 10% rule, which I came up with just on my experience, and it works like this. That the 10% rule is that review takes approximately 10% of the time it took to attain clarity. Whatever the amount of time it took to get clear on something, usually Chazara review takes 10% of the time, if not less. So for example, let's say to learn something, let's say to go through a daf and to get the Shakataria clear, it took an hour, 60 minutes. Well, once you reach clarity, then review would only take 6 minutes, right? And most people take out a clock. If you just put that clock on, once you have Shakataria clear, you can read the daf smoothly, and you understand what's happening. You have basic pshat. Usually takes about, let's say, 6 minutes, if that, to go through the daf inside. So it's 10% of the time it took to get clarity. If it took 30 minutes to get, let's say, the Mishnah is down in a parak, so you have 30 minutes of learning time to get to clarity, well then Chazar on the parak, on average, a Mishnah would take about 3 minutes, right? And this is, they're not absolute numbers, but ballpark. Let's say 3 minutes, 10% rule. And what happens is that the math starts to add up in your favor. Let's say, as we just said, a parak takes 30 minutes to do. So in terms of review, according to the 10% rule, it takes 3 minutes. So if we just stated that. Then let's say if it takes 30 minutes to go through a parak, well, brachas has 9 prakim. So that means the learning time for brachas, the 9 prakim would be 4.5 hours. So to do review, that would be 27 minutes, because 4.5 hours is 270 minutes. So 10% of the time is 27 minutes. So think about it. To go through Maseches Brachas, once you have it clear, it's less than half an hour. The entire Masechta, right? It's dramatic. Now let's take Seder Zorim. Seder Zorim has 75 prakim, so that would be 37.5 hours of learning time. How long would it take to review the entire Seder? Once you have it clear, a grand total of 3 hours and 45 minutes to review the entire Seder. That's Brachas, Pei, Demai, Climb, Shuvas, Shvis, Trumas, Mises, Sheni, Chala, Ora, and Bikurim. That's 11 Masechtas right there. It would take 3 hours and 45 minutes, less than 4 hours to review the entire Seder. So you see the power of the 10% rule and the idea, if you get beyond the Chazar misconception, that the goal is to get to clarity. Once you're clear, you're on the other side of the equation. So now let's consider what your learning life could be like after you've attained clarity on a lot of material. So for example, for brachas, we said it would take 27 minutes to review the entire Masechta. So that means if you did, 5 minutes a day, 6 days a week, that would be Chazara of the entire Masechta, right? 5 minutes a day, less than 5 minutes a day, 6 days a week, that would get you the entire Masechta. Can you find 5 minutes a day to review brachas? Absolutely. You probably could find, by the way, 27 minutes within a single day, right? There's a lot of periods of time that we're doing things that wasting our time, reading things we shouldn't be reading, or watching videos that we shouldn't, be a waste of time to watch, or we could be just, on our way to work or school, or, sitting at a chasna waiting for something. There's a lot of time, 27 minutes a day. I'm sure we could even find that you could review the entire brachas, once a day. Now let's add it up, go further. Seder Zroim. Let's say we did a monthly chazor on Seder Zroim. So that's 3 hours and 45 minutes divided into 30 units. That would be 7.5 minutes a day. That's it, 7.5 minutes a day. And that would get you through the entire Seder once a month, right? If we did 50 minutes a day, you could review the entire Seder every 2 weeks, roughly. And if you did 30 minutes a day, you could review it once a week. So, and if you want to spend one afternoon going through the Seder, then there you go. In less than an afternoon Seder, in less than 4 hours, you can go through the entire Seder Zroim. That's once you're 100% clear. So that's the power of the 10% rule once you get beyond the misconception that Chazor is happening before you're clear. Once you're clear, that's the time to own it. So therefore, in terms of the ideal learning pattern, I would suggest it's like this. You learn the material, however, get to clarity. Once you're clear, review the material 4 times immediately. So you learn a Mishnah. Once you got it clear, you understand the pshat in the words, review the Mishnah 4 times fast so you can see the pshat in the words as you're reading and own it, because that's the time to get it down easily. I always tell people the fastest, easiest, least painful time to do review is when you're 100% clear. And that's usually right when you're learning something. So once you attain the clarity, that's the time to knock it in 4 times fast, 4 times, do that review, and then you'll be amazed how you've condensed the material into a much smaller unit in your mind's eye, and then you'll be able to build through a lot of Mishnayos. So what I would suggest is learn a Mishnah, do it 4 times, get it down really well so you can breeze through it, and then go further. And if you do that for the week's material, just keep going through the week's material so that whatever you cover over the 5 days in the Mishnayos, you just every day you're reviewing it all, that material you have it clear. The next week it's going to take a fraction of the time. 20 Mishnayos is maybe it's 2 prakim, maybe 2.5 prakim, sometimes let's say 3 prakim, but that's maximum, 3 minutes a parak, that's 9 minutes. Again, it could be 11 minutes, 12 minutes, but you see the math is on your side. So that's the 10% rule. It's very, very powerful. And this is without any other memory strategy, right? Because the real goal in learning is to get your learning down so glad you can keep doing these quick chazoras. And then when you want to build, you're going to, go weiter and understand more deeply the material you went through. So now you're going to go more carefully through the chazor that you make sure you understand every step. That's really, you're back on the learning side, which is great. Now you have all this material down well on one level. Now you can go more carefully and process it again, but that processing is back on the learning side as you try to understand things you may have missed or things you could add on or connections you can make now. So if you take this and you take it together with what we're doing in Simanim, which is filing all of that, then you have a very, very powerful combination in terms of Chazorah. So we'll talk more about scheduling Chazorah and the way to do it over the course of the week, but I wanted to introduce this concept as we're early on Time for Mishnah and Seder Zroim, so you have it down wherever you might be when you're listening to the session. This is really the key. The key is get it, ownership, get the clarity now, and then you're using the 10% rule to your benefit, and you'll be able to accomplish so much more than you ever thought was doable, attainable. It's not magic. It's just the way our efficiently work. And if you just use that to your advantage, you will achieve remarkable breakthroughs and go so much further in your learning and in your mastery of Mishnayos and other areas of your learning. All right, so that's it for Time for Mishnah, our session on Remember Your Learning and the 10% Rule. Have a great day and great learning.